Today, we're going to dig into a really interesting lesson that comes all the way from feudal Japan. But you'll be surprised at how much it has to say about a super modern problem. You know, that frustrating gap between having huge ambitions and what we actually manage to do every day. So let me ask you this. Do you ever have that feeling? You've got the grand vision, maybe the perfect plan all laid out in your head, but when the moment comes to actually do the thing, nothing happens. You just feel stuck.
Well, if any of that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. It's a fundamental human struggle, right? And we're going to unpack it today through a pretty powerful story that doesn't just explain why it happens, but actually shows us what we can do about it. Our story kicks off with a young samurai named Yuki, and he pretty much personifies what we're going to call the dreamer's trap. This place where having really big ambitions can, weirdly enough, lead to doing nothing at all. Okay, so meet Yuki. This guy lived in the future. He could talk for hours about his destiny, becoming this legendary warrior, picturing every single glorious victory in his mind. And for him, that ambition was everything. He really believed the dream itself was all the power he needed. But here's the catch. When the sun came up and it was actually time to pick up the sword and train, Yuki always had a reason not to. The weather wasn't quite right, he wasn't feeling 100%, or he'd tell himself, you know what, I just need to plan a little more carefully before I really get started.
And so years went by like this, and this really painful truth started to sink in. His ambition, it hadn't propelled him forward at all. It had actually become this comfortable cage. His dreams, because they weren't backed up by any action, had literally made him weaker, just leaving him frustrated and full of regret.
So what is going on here? I mean, why do so many of us, just like Yuki, get trapped in this exact same cycle? Well, the answer lies in this huge misunderstanding we have about what motivation actually is. You see, there's a real psychological reason for this, and it's what we're calling the dreamer's trap. It turns out our brains give us this little burst of satisfaction just from talking about our goals. It kind of tricks us into feeling like we've already made progress, which makes doing nothing feel surprisingly okay. We've all been taught that motivation is the spark, right? You have to feel inspired before you can act. But the story of Yuki and the wisdom of the samurai, well, it challenges that whole idea. What if we have it completely backward? And that brings us to the most important question. If waiting around for inspiration is the trap, how in the world do we escape it and finally start turning all those ambitions into something real? The solution is in a totally different way of thinking, a philosophy we can call the way of action. And it's a perspective shift that completely flips the dreamer's logic on its head. Here it is. This is the core difference. The dreamer's mindset is all about waiting for the right feeling to kick in before they start. But the warrior's mindset? It's about acting first, knowing that the feeling of motivation will follow the action. So here's the absolute truth of it. Action creates momentum, and it's that momentum that creates the energy we call motivation. See, motivation isn't the cause, it's the effect. It's not the spark, it's the flame that action ignites. Okay, great. But how do we actually put this action-first idea into practice? Well, the samurai had a really powerful method for building that momentum from a dead stop. It's a concept called Kaizen Nomi. And really, it's just the way of small, consistent improvements. The idea here is that true mastery isn't achieved in some giant, heroic burst of effort. No, it's forged in the quiet, humble, and, let's be honest, sometimes boring rhythm of daily repetition. I mean, think about it. We get so overwhelmed staring at the peak of the mountain, right? That massive end goal. Kaizen teaches us to just forget the peak for a minute. The only thing that actually matters is taking one single manageable step right now. So what does this path actually look like? It starts with one tiny, almost trivial action, but the key, the absolute non-negotiable part, is repeating it every single day. Over time, that repetition builds so much more than a skill. It forges discipline. And that discipline, that becomes the unshakable foundation for everything else. All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most profound lesson in this entire philosophy. It gets to the very root of why we procrastinate and wait for motivation in the first place. We love to call ourselves lazy, but that's not really the enemy. The real enemy is our deep-seated fear of discomfort. It's the discomfort of starting when you're tired, the resistance of pushing through when it feels hard. Waiting for motivation is just a really clever way to avoid that feeling. The great sword master Yagi Munenori put it perfectly. If we wait for the perfect moment, the right mood, the right energy level, we could be waiting forever. The sword just stays in its sheath. The work doesn't get done. So real discipline, real strength, isn't about feeling ready. It's the ability to act despite how you feel. It's about showing up and taking that one small step, even when, and especially when, conditions are far from ideal.
So, if our feelings, these fleeting emotions and sparks of motivation, aren't reliable guides for action, then what is? What should we anchor ourselves to? And this is it. This is the ultimate principle. It's the shift from being controlled by temporary feelings to being guided by your commitments. True strength isn't found in saying, I feel like doing this. It's found in saying, I will do this, whether I feel like it or not. And that is the power to act without waiting for motivation. That is the power to build the life you actually want.